The sun was just beginning to rise over London as guard captain Marcus Williams adjusted his red uniform jacket for the third time that morning. His black boots were polished so well that they reflected the early morning light like mirrors. The golden buttons on his jacket caught the sunlight as he stood perfectly straight outside the tall iron gates of Buckingham Palace. Marcus had been doing this job for 12 long years. Every single morning he would wake up at 5:30 sharp. He would shower, shave his face until it was smooth as glass, and put on his uniform with the same careful attention his mother had taught him when he was a young boy learning to dress himself. The uniform meant everything to him. It represented honor, duty, and the promise he had made to protect the royal family with his own life if necessary. The morning air was crisp and clean. Marcus could smell the fresh flowers that the palace gardeners had planted just last week. Pink roses, white lilies, and yellow daffodils created a beautiful carpet of colors along the palace grounds. The grass was still wet with morning dew, and small drops of water sparkled like tiny diamonds in the growing sunlight. As Marcus stood at his post, he watched the city slowly wake up around him. First came the early morning joggers, their feet hitting the pavement in steady rhythms as they ran past the palace. Then came the business people in their dark suits, walking quickly toward the subway stations with coffee cups in their hands and newspapers tucked under their arms. Their faces looked serious and focused as they hurried to start their workday. But Marcus's favorite part of the morning was when the tourists began to arrive. Families with children would gather behind the metal barriers that kept them a safe distance from the palace. The children would point at Marcus and the other guards with excitement, their eyes wide with wonder. Some would wave, and although Marcus had to remain perfectly still and serious, he always felt a warm feeling in his heart when he saw their happy faces. Marcus had learned to read people very well during his years as a royal guard. He could tell which tourists were just excited to see the palace and which ones might cause trouble. He knew how to spot someone who had been drinking too much alcohol, someone who might try to climb the fence, or someone who seemed angry or upset about something. His sharp blue eyes would scan the growing crowd constantly, moving from face to face, looking for anything that seemed out of place or dangerous. The other guards respected Marcus because he had never made a mistake in all his years of service. He had stopped people from throwing things at the palace, he had caught pickpockets trying to steal from tourists, and he had even helped reunite lost children with their worried parents. His fellow guards often said that Marcus had a sixth sense about trouble. He could feel when something was wrong even before he could see what it was. On this particular Tuesday morning, Marcus felt that familiar tingle in the back of his mind. It was the same feeling he got when storm clouds were building even though the sky still looked clear. Something was different about today, but he could not figure out what it was. The tourists looked normal. The street vendors were setting up their carts to sell postcards, toy soldiers, and small British flags just like they did every day. The traffic moved at its usual slow pace as cars and buses carried people to work. Marcus took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. Whatever was coming, he would be ready for it. He had trained for years to handle any situation that might threaten the safety of the royal family or the innocent people who came to visit the palace. His rifle was clean and ready, his radio was working perfectly, and his mind was sharp and alert. The perfect morning was about to become something much more dangerous than Marcus could have ever imagined. The morning crowd was getting bigger as more tourists arrived to see the famous Buckingham Palace. Marcus watched families pose for pictures, their cameras clicking constantly as they tried to capture the perfect memory of their visit to London. Children pressed their faces against the iron bars of the palace gates, hoping to catch a glimpse of a real prince or princess walking in the gardens beyond. Marcus was scanning the crowd with his trained eyes when something caught his attention. A small figure was moving differently from everyone else. While the other tourists stayed together in groups, this little person was walking alone. Marcus focused his gaze and saw it was a young girl, probably no more than 6 years old. The child had beautiful curly blonde hair that bounced with each step she took. Her hair caught the morning sunlight and seemed to glow like spun gold around her small face. She wore a bright red dress that looked new and expensive, with white lace around the collar and sleeves. In her tiny arms, she clutched an old teddy bear that had clearly been loved for many years. The bear's brown fur was worn thin in places, and one of its button eyes was hanging loose by a single thread. What worried Marcus most was the expression on the little girl's face. While all the other children around the palace were laughing and pointing with excitement, this child looked scared and confused. Her big blue eyes were wide with fear, and Marcus could see tears starting to form even from his distance away. She kept turning her head left and right, as if she was looking for someone but could not find them. The girl began walking away from the main crowd of tourists. Instead of staying near the palace gates where it was safe and where the guards could see her clearly, she started moving toward the street. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with worry. A child that young should never be alone in such a busy area of London. There were cars and buses moving constantly, and there were always people in big cities who might want to hurt a lost child. Marcus watched as the little girl crossed the street, looking both ways carefully like a good child who had been taught about traffic safety. But she still seemed lost and frightened. She walked slowly along the sidewalk, hugging her teddy bear closer to her chest with each step. Her red dress made her easy to spot among all the people wearing dark clothes, but that also made Marcus worry that she might attract the wrong kind of attention. Then Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. Across the street from the palace gates, parked in a spot where it had a clear view of all the tourists, was a white van. The van looked ordinary enough at first glance. It was the kind that delivery companies use to transport packages, or that repair workers use to carry their tools. But several things about this van made Marcus feel very uneasy. First, the windows were tinted much darker than normal. Marcus could not see inside the van at all, which was unusual. Most work vans had clear windows so the drivers could see properly and so police officers could look inside if they needed to. Second, the van had been parked in the same spot for much longer than most vehicles stayed there. Marcus had noticed it when he first arrived for his shift, and it was still there hours later. Most concerning of all, the back doors of the van were slightly open. Just a crack, but enough that someone could quickly pull those doors wide open if they needed to. The little girl in the red dress was walking directly toward that van, and Marcus could see that she was looking at it with curiosity rather than fear. Marcus gripped his radio tighter and prepared to make a decision that could change everything. Marcus felt his heart start beating faster as he watched the little girl get closer to the suspicious white van. Every instinct he had developed during his 12 years as a royal guard was telling him that something was very wrong with this situation. The child was maybe 20 feet away from the van now, and Marcus could see her small hand reaching toward the partially open back door. Without hesitation, Marcus left his post at the palace gates. His heavy black boots made sharp clicking sounds on the stone pavement as he walked quickly across the street. He had to be careful not to run because that might scare the little girl or cause panic among the tourists who were watching. But every second felt like an hour as he tried to reach her before she got to that van. The morning traffic was busy, and Marcus had to wait for 3 cars and a red double-decker bus to pass before he could cross the street safely. While he waited, he kept his eyes locked on the child in the red dress. She was now standing right next to the van, looking up at the back doors with curious eyes. Her teddy bear dangled from one small hand while she used her other hand to touch the cold metal of the van door. Marcus raised his voice just loud enough for the girl to hear him, but not so loud that he would startle her. "Hey there, little one," he called out in the gentlest tone he could manage. His voice was naturally deep and strong from years of giving commands, but he tried to make it sound like a friendly grandfather talking to his granddaughter. The little girl stopped what she was doing and turned around to look at him. When she saw Marcus in his red guard uniform with all the shiny buttons and gold trim, her eyes grew even wider. Most children were fascinated by the royal guards, and this little girl was no different. But Marcus could see that her blue eyes were filled with tears that threatened to spill down her cheeks at any moment. Marcus knelt down on one knee so that he would be at the same height as the child. This was something he had learned during his training. When you wanted to talk to a scared child, you had to make yourself seem less big and threatening. His red uniform jacket stretched tight across his chest as he lowered himself down, and his rifle shifted on his shoulder. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Marcus asked in his softest voice. The little girl nodded her head up and down several times, and a single tear rolled down her left cheek. She wiped it away with the back of her hand and then hugged her teddy bear tight against her chest. "I cannot find my mommy," the child said in a tiny voice that was barely louder than a whisper. "I was playing in the park, and then I got lost, and I have been walking for a very long time, and I am scared." Marcus felt his heart break a little bit hearing how frightened this innocent child was. But then she said something that made his blood turn to ice in his veins. The little girl pointed toward the white van with her small finger. "The nice man in there said he would help me find my mommy," she said. "He told me to get in the back of his van, and he would drive me around until we found her. He said he has candy and toys for me to play with while we look." Marcus felt every muscle in his body tense up like a coiled spring. This was exactly the kind of trick that dangerous people use to kidnap children. They would offer candy or toys or promise to help find the child's parents. Then they would take the child somewhere far away where no one could find them. Marcus knew he had to act fast, but he also had to be very careful not to scare the little girl even more than she already was. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he processed what the little girl had just told him. Someone inside that van had already spoken to her and tried to convince her to get inside. This was no coincidence or innocent offer of help. This was a carefully planned trap, and this sweet child had almost walked right into it. "What is your name, little one?" Marcus asked gently, extending his large hand toward her. His voice remained calm and steady, even though his mind was racing with alarm. He needed to get her away from that van immediately, but he had to do it in a way that would not frighten her more than she already was. "My name is Emma," the little girl replied, looking up at Marcus with those big blue eyes that reminded him of his own daughter back home. "Are you a real soldier like in the movies?" "I am a royal guard," Marcus explained as he slowly stood up, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. "My job is to protect people, especially children like you. And right now, I want to help you find your real mommy, not the man in that van." Marcus carefully took Emma's small hand in his. Her fingers were cold and tiny, like holding a baby bird. He began walking her away from the white van. But as they moved, he could not resist taking a closer look at what was inside those partially open back doors. What Marcus saw made his stomach turn, and his anger flare up like a bonfire. The inside of the van was not set up for delivering packages or carrying work tools like a normal van should be. Instead, it looked like someone had prepared it specifically for taking children. There were thick ropes coiled up on the floor of the van, the kind that would be used to tie someone up so they could not escape. Next to the ropes was a roll of silver duct tape, shiny and new, clearly meant to keep someone from screaming for help. Scattered around the floor were pieces of children's clothing in different sizes, as if the person who owned this van had done this terrible thing before. Marcus also spotted a small video camera sitting on a black tripod in the corner of the van. The red recording light was blinking, which meant someone was filming everything that was happening outside. This made Marcus feel even more sick to his stomach because he realized that whoever was doing this was not just planning to hurt children, but also wanted to record it. On a small shelf inside the van, Marcus could see several plastic bottles filled with clear liquid. Even from his distance, he could tell these were not normal drinks. The bottles had no labels, and the liquid inside looked thick and strange. Marcus had seen enough police training videos to know that these were probably drugs meant to make children sleepy, so they could not fight back or call for help. The most disturbing thing Marcus noticed was a small pile of stuffed animals near the front of the van. There was a pink bunny, a brown puppy, and a white cat, all looking new and expensive. These were clearly meant to be gifts to trick children into trusting whoever was inside the van. As Marcus led Emma further away from the dangerous vehicle, he felt her small hand squeeze his fingers tighter. "I am scared," she whispered, looking back at the van with worried eyes. The man said he had pictures of my mommy on his phone, and that she was waiting for me. Marcus knelt down again and looked directly into Emma's eyes. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said in his most serious but gentle voice. "That man in the van is not a good person. He was lying to you about your mommy. But I am going to make sure you are safe, and I promise we will find your real parents." Marcus could see movement inside the van now. Someone was definitely in there, watching them. Marcus knew he had to act quickly but carefully. With Emma's small hand still in his, he began walking toward the palace gates where his fellow guards were stationed. He needed to get this innocent child to safety before confronting whoever was hiding inside that van. Every step felt important, and Marcus made sure to keep his body between Emma and the suspicious vehicle at all times. As they walked, Marcus reached for the small black radio attached to his uniform belt. He had to call for backup, but he needed to do it without alarming Emma or letting the person in the van know that their plan had been discovered. Marcus had learned long ago how to speak in code when dangerous situations were developing. "Control, this is Marcus at the North Gate," he said quietly into his radio, keeping his voice calm and steady. "I need immediate backup for a code red situation. Possible child predator activity. Send police units and additional guards to my location immediately." The voice that came back through his radio sounded sharp and alert. "Copy that, Marcus. Units are on their way. Estimated arrival time is 3 minutes. Are you and the civilians safe at this moment?" "Affirmative," Marcus replied, looking down at Emma, who was walking beside him with her teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. "The child is secure, but we have an active threat that needs immediate attention." Emma looked up at Marcus with curious eyes. "Who are you talking to on that little box?" she asked innocently. Her voice sounded a bit stronger now that she was farther away from the scary van, but Marcus could still see the fear and confusion in her face. "I am talking to my friends who help keep people safe," Marcus explained as they reached the palace gates. "They are coming to help us find your real mommy and make sure the bad man cannot hurt anyone." Marcus signaled to his fellow guard, Robert, who had been watching the situation develop from his post. Robert was a tall man with red hair who had been working as a royal guard for 8 years. He immediately understood that something serious was happening when he saw Marcus approaching with a lost child. "Robert, I need you to take care of Emma here," Marcus said, gently guiding the little girl toward his colleague. "She is lost and scared, but she is safe now. Contact the local police and help them find her parents. Her name is Emma, and she was separated from her family at a nearby park." Robert knelt down to Emma's level just like Marcus had done. "Hello, Emma," he said with a warm smile. "I have a little girl just about your age at home. Would you like to come sit with me while we wait for your mommy and daddy?" Emma looked back at Marcus with worried eyes. She had started to trust him, and now she did not want him to leave her with someone new. "Where are you going?" she asked in a small voice. Marcus knelt down one more time and looked directly into Emma's eyes. "Emma, you are very brave and very smart. You did the right thing by not getting into that van, even though the man seemed nice. Now I need to go make sure that man cannot trick any other children like he tried to trick you." "But what if he tries to hurt you?" Emma asked, her bottom lip starting to tremble. Marcus felt his heart fill with warmth at this child's concern for his safety. Even though she was scared and lost, she was worried about him. "Emma, it is my job to stop bad people from hurting children. I have been trained for this, and I have special equipment and friends who will help me. You just focus on staying safe with Robert here." Marcus could see movement near the white van again. The back doors were starting to open wider, and he caught a glimpse of a dark figure moving inside. Time was running out. He needed to act before this dangerous person decided to drive away and look for another victim somewhere else. Marcus watched as Robert gently led Emma toward the safety of the palace guardhouse. The little girl turned back once to wave at Marcus, her teddy bear still clutched in her other arm. Marcus waved back and gave her an encouraging smile, but his attention quickly returned to the white van across the street. The back doors of the van were now opening completely. Marcus could see a man's shadow moving inside the vehicle, and his muscles tensed as he prepared for whatever was about to happen. Years of training had taught him to stay calm in dangerous situations, but this was different. This was about protecting an innocent child from someone who wanted to cause terrible harm. Slowly, a man stepped out of the back of the van. At first glance, he looked completely ordinary, which made him even more dangerous. He appeared to be in his 40s, with brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. He wore a plain blue baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, dark jeans, and a gray sweater that looked like something any normal person might wear to go shopping or visit friends. But Marcus had learned to look beyond appearances. The man's eyes were what gave him away. They were cold and calculating, moving quickly from side to side like a predator searching for prey. His hands were shaking slightly, and he kept wiping sweat from his forehead, even though the morning air was cool and comfortable. The man started walking across the street toward the palace gates, and Marcus could see him scanning the crowd of tourists. His eyes stopped when they found Emma standing next to Robert near the guardhouse. A sick smile spread across the man's face, and Marcus felt his anger growing stronger with each passing second. "Emma," the man called out in a loud, friendly voice that sounded completely fake to Marcus's trained ears. "Emma, sweetheart, there you are. I have been looking everywhere for you." The man's voice had the kind of forced cheerfulness that adults sometimes used when they were trying too hard to sound nice. It reminded Marcus of the way some people talk to animals they were trying to catch. Sweet on the surface, but with something wrong underneath. Emma looked confused and frightened when she heard the man calling her name. She pressed herself closer to Robert and shook her head back and forth. "I do not know who that man is," she said in a voice loud enough for Marcus to hear. "He is not my daddy." But the man kept walking toward them, and Marcus could see him reaching into the front pocket of his gray sweater. The man's movements were slow and deliberate, like he was trying not to draw attention to what he was doing. Marcus had seen enough dangerous people to know that someone reaching into their pocket during a tense situation was never a good sign. "Emma, do not be silly," the man said, still using that fake, sweet voice. "You know who I am. I am your Uncle Mike. Remember, your mommy sent me to come find you because she was so worried." Marcus knew this was all lies. Emma had never seen this man before in her life, and her frightened reaction proved it. The man was trying to use confusion and authority to make Emma believe she should go with him. It was a classic trick that predators use to kidnap children in broad daylight. Marcus stepped forward and positioned himself directly between the man and Emma. His hand moved to rest on his rifle, not pointing it at anyone yet, but making it clear that he was ready to use it if necessary. The morning sun reflected off the metal parts of his weapon, creating small flashes of light that caught the attention of nearby tourists. "Stop right there," Marcus said in his strongest, most commanding voice. The man froze when he heard Marcus's commanding voice, but his hand remained inside his sweater pocket. Marcus could see the man's eyes darting left and right, looking for escape routes or trying to figure out if there were other guards nearby. Sweat was now dripping down the man's face, and his breathing had become quick and shallow. "I said stop," Marcus repeated, his voice even stronger and more authoritative than before. "Take your hand out of your pocket slowly and keep it where I can see it." The man tried to put on an innocent expression, but Marcus had dealt with enough criminals and troublemakers to recognize when someone was lying. "Officer, I think there has been some kind of misunderstanding," the man said, attempting to sound calm and reasonable. "That little girl over there is my niece. Her name is Emma, and her mother asked me to pick her up." Marcus kept his eyes locked on the man while speaking loudly enough for Emma to hear him clearly. "Emma, do you know this man?" Have you ever seen him before in your whole life? Emma's voice came back strong and clear, even though Marcus could tell she was still scared. No, I do not know him. I have never seen him before. He is not my uncle. My uncle's name is Tom, and he has black hair, and he is much taller. The man's fake smile disappeared for just a moment, and Marcus saw a flash of anger and frustration cross his face. This was exactly the reaction Marcus had been expecting. Real family members would be patient and understanding if a child was confused or scared. They would try to comfort the child and help prove who they were. But predators got angry when their lies did not work. Emma is just confused because she is scared, the man said, but his voice was no longer friendly and sweet. Now it sounded harder and more demanding. Children say all kinds of things when they are upset. I really need to take her home to her mother right now. Marcus took a step closer to the man, his boots making a sharp sound on the pavement. Sir, I am going to need you to remove your hand from your pocket immediately and show me some identification. If you are really this child's family member, you should have no problem proving it. The man's eyes became cold and calculating again. Marcus could see him looking past the palace gates to where Emma was standing with Robert. Then the man looked back at Marcus, studying his uniform, his rifle, and his position between the van and the palace. You do not understand the situation, officer, the man said, and now his voice had a threatening edge to it. That child belongs with me, and I am not leaving here without her. Marcus felt his training kick in completely. Every muscle in his body was ready for action, and his mind was processing multiple possibilities at once. The man was still reaching for something in his pocket. Emma was safe, but still within sight of this dangerous person, and backup should be arriving any moment. Emma, I want you to go inside the guardhouse with Robert right now, Marcus called out without taking his eyes off the man. Do not come back outside until I tell you it is safe. Marcus could hear Emma's small footsteps as she and Robert moved toward the solid stone building where she would be protected. The sound of the heavy door closing behind them gave Marcus some relief, but he knew the most dangerous part of this confrontation was just beginning. The man finally pulled his hand out of his pocket, and Marcus saw exactly what he had been reaching for. It was not a weapon, but it was something almost as dangerous in the hands of someone with evil intentions. What the man pulled from his pocket made Marcus's blood run cold. It was a small plastic bag filled with white cable ties, the kind that police use to restrain criminals, but much smaller and thinner. These were clearly meant for a child's wrists and ankles. Along with the cable ties, the man also held a small brown bottle with no label, and Marcus could smell a sweet chemical odor coming from it even from several feet away. You made a big mistake, guard, the man said, his voice now completely different from the fake friendly tone he had used before. You should have minded your own business and let me take what belongs to me. Marcus felt his anger surge like fire in his chest, but his training kept him calm and focused. That child does not belong to anyone except her real parents, Marcus said firmly. And you are not going anywhere except to jail. The sound of sirens began to fill the air as police cars and additional palace security vehicles raced toward their location. Marcus could see flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the windows of nearby buildings, but the backup was still at least 30 seconds away, and 30 seconds could feel like a lifetime in a dangerous situation like this. The man heard the sirens too, and panic flashed across his face. He looked around desperately, realizing that his escape routes were being cut off. Behind him was his van, but Marcus was blocking his path to it. To his left and right were busy streets full of traffic and pedestrians. The only way out was past Marcus, and that was not going to happen. You have no idea what you are dealing with, the man said, his voice getting louder and more frantic. There are others like me, and we always get what we want. That little girl was chosen, and someone is going to be very angry that you interfered. Marcus felt sick hearing these words because they confirmed his worst fears. This was not just one sick person acting alone. This was part of a larger group that targeted and hurt children. The thought of other children being in danger because of people like this man made Marcus more determined than ever to stop him. Suddenly, the man made a desperate decision. He threw the bottle and cable ties at Marcus's face, hoping to distract him long enough to either reach his van or grab Emma. But Marcus had been expecting something like this. His reflexes, honed by years of military and guard training, were lightning fast. Marcus ducked under the thrown objects and lunged forward. The man tried to run toward the guardhouse where Emma was hiding, but Marcus was bigger, stronger, and much faster. Within 3 quick steps, Marcus had caught up to the man and tackled him to the ground. The two men hit the pavement hard, with Marcus using his training to control the fall and pin the criminal underneath him. The man struggled and tried to fight back, but he was no match for a royal guard who worked out every day and had been trained in combat techniques. "Let me go," the man screamed, trying to scratch and punch at Marcus. "You do not understand what you are doing. There will be consequences for this." Marcus pressed the man's face against the cold pavement and used his knee to keep him from moving. "The only consequences will be for you when you spend the rest of your life in prison," Marcus said through gritted teeth. Police cars screeched to a halt around them, and officers jumped out with their weapons drawn. Marcus could hear Robert's voice calling out from the guardhouse, telling Emma that everything was going to be okay and that the bad man could not hurt her anymore. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning of uncovering something much bigger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. 3 hours later, Marcus stood outside the palace gates watching as little Emma ran into the arms of her parents. Her mother, a woman with the same blonde curly hair as Emma, was crying tears of joy and relief as she held her daughter tight. Emma's father, a tall man with kind eyes, kept saying thank you over and over again to everyone who had helped find his little girl. The police had searched the white van completely and found evidence that made Marcus feel both sick and proud at the same time. Along with the ropes, drugs, and camera equipment, they discovered photographs of at least 12 other children. Some of the photos looked recent, which meant there were other families somewhere who were probably worried sick about their missing children right now. Detective Sarah Collins, the lead investigator on the case, walked over to Marcus with a serious expression on her face. She was a small woman with gray hair, but Marcus could tell she was tough and experienced. "Marcus, what you did today probably saved dozens of children," she said. "The man we arrested is named David Fletcher, and he has been wanted by police in 5 different countries." Marcus felt his stomach turn as he listened to Detective Collins explain what they had learned about David Fletcher. The man was part of an international network that kidnapped children and sold them to other criminals around the world. The white van was just one of many vehicles they used to patrol areas where families visited with their children. How did they choose their targets? Marcus asked, though he was not sure he really wanted to know the answer. They looked for children who were separated from their parents, even for just a few minutes, Detective Collins explained. Places like amusement parks, shopping centers, tourist attractions like this palace. They had a whole system worked out. Fletcher would watch for lost children, offer to help them, and then disappear before anyone noticed. Marcus looked over at Emma, who was now sitting on her father's shoulders and pointing at the palace gates. She seemed happy and safe, but he knew it would probably take a long time for her family to feel completely normal again. The thought of what could have happened to her if he had not trusted his instincts made Marcus feel cold inside. 2 days later, Marcus received a phone call that surprised him. It was from Buckingham Palace itself. The royal family had heard about what happened and wanted to meet with him personally. Marcus had protected many important people during his career, but he had never actually spoken with any members of the royal family face to face. The meeting took place in a beautiful room inside the palace that Marcus had never seen before. The walls were covered with paintings of kings and queens from hundreds of years ago, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. When the queen walked into the room, Marcus stood at attention, just like he had been trained to do. "Guard Captain Williams," the queen said with a warm smile. What you did for that little girl and her family represents the very best of what it means to serve and protect others. Your quick thinking and brave actions stopped a terrible crime and helped police arrest dangerous criminals. The Queen presented Marcus with a special medal for exceptional bravery in the line of duty. As she pinned it to his uniform, she said something that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. The true measure of a person is not how they act when people are watching, but how they act when they think no one will ever know. You chose to protect an innocent child even though it meant leaving your post and putting yourself in danger. Marcus returned to his duties at the palace gates, but everything felt different now. Every time he saw a family with children visiting the palace, he thought about Emma and how close she had come to being taken away from the people who loved her.